motherfuckers? It's the hater back again, getting ready to watch whatever NXT show they have on tonight, motherfucks. Right? I think it's like the Portland one, but it's on a Sunday, which means like I expect some cool things to happen. You know, I know they have like some other shit going down, but you know, it's gonna be some good matches, I feel like. So we'll see, motherfuckers. We'll see. You understand what I'm saying? All right. But before then, I figured I'd make at least one video, maybe a couple, you know what I'm saying? But let's get to it, right? We're going to talk today about the 10 best, quote-unquote, wrestlers in the world. Of all time, if you will, right? I'm pretty sure most of these motherfuckers are still alive, but of all time, right? Now, before we start the list, I'm going to just say a couple of things. Number one, all right? And this is very important. This list includes only wrestlers, right? So for example, someone like Vince McMahon, right? I think Vince McMahon is probably the best entertainer in WWE history. But because he's not primarily a wrestler and he's primarily the owner, motherfucks, he will not be included in this list, right? But just the fact that I mentioned him should show you cucks how much I care and respect the Vince there, right? So there we go. Another caveat. This list will primarily involve people that I like, right? So this is not some sort of objective metric list, right? So for example, Hulk Hogan is indisputably the greatest wrestler of all time, right? But he's not in my favorite top 10, and I don't think he's the best if you take into account the categories which I'm taking into account. And that's the third caveat. This will be based on the following categories. Proficiency in the ring, right? But that's the least important one, right? Proficiency in the ring. Charisma, ability to do well with gimmicks, overall packaging, ability to cut promos, motherfuckers, and the most important one, of course, entertainment, right? Entertainment is the most important thing that we're going to be looking at. Why? I'll tell you why, motherfuckers. Because wrestling is not about the actual wrestling, right? It's about whether you're entertaining me or not. So if you were to take someone, I don't want to give away my list, but if you were to take someone that's not on my list, let's say Tajiri, right? Tajiri did not make the list, motherfuckers. Tajiri, like this guy was great in the ring, but he really shined because he was entertaining, right? He was able to kind of make himself interesting despite the fact that he spoke no English. He did a lot of very good physical comedy. His matches were great. When he was a heel, he was a very good heel in my opinion. So there's a lot to say about people like him, right? So it's going to be that kind of metric, right? Overallness in that kind of idea, right? We're going to talk about each wrestler a little bit, more so with the ones on the main list, not the honorable mentions. That's right, motherfuckers. We got honorable mentions. Now, before we get started, let's talk a little bit about the new subscribers that we've gotten since my last video. Now, we got, there's a few more, but the ones that show up on the list are the following. John Oswald, motherfuckers. John Oswald. I may have mentioned him in the other video. I'm not sure, but welcome, John Oswald. I like you. I like your character. It's like a little whatever, meme face crying. Then we got Cardi Cartoons. Cardi Cartoons. I like that, man. And your avatar, I thought it was a carrot, but it's not. It's some sort of devil thing. You know what I'm saying? Looks like the devil from Powerpuff Girls. You know what I'm saying? Next, we got, what's his face? Sonic Sky Chaser. Sonic Sky Chaser, welcome. I like you too, man. I don't know what your avatar is, but it looks like some action figure, but I like that name. Then we got Jason L. Bryant, whose avatar is just a jack dude. I like that, man. I like that because that might be your real name, Jason L. Bryant. You know, I recommend that you don't do that because sometimes it fucks you up. So I'm just letting you know that. But I dig that. You know, you look like you could be a wrestler. You look like if you went to that's a picture of you. If you went to AEW, you could be world champion in about a week, destroying jobbers like Cody. You know what I'm saying? Then lastly, but not leastly, we have Big Fresh Games, motherfuckers. Oh, sorry, Big Fresh Gaming. Now that's BIGPHRESH Gaming. I say that because his avatar says BPG, so you know I wanted people to know that shit, motherfuckers. All right, now let's get to it. All right, let's get to the list, motherfuckers. All right, now we're gonna talk about the honorable mentions first. Okay. It's very important that we mention these people because these are people that on any given day could have been on the list, but they weren't on the list because I didn't feel like it today, motherfuckers. You know, but these are people that are right there. They're right there on the cusp. You know, so these are people that I consider to be very, very good entertainers and very, very good wrestlers, as I will explain shortly. So in no particular order for the honorable mentions, we've got Goldberg, motherfuckers. Goldberg. Now, I was mostly a WWF guy when I was a kid, so I didn't really like Goldberg much when I was a child, and I didn't particularly like that kind of wrestler. You know what I mean? I didn't really like the Goldbergs of the world, right? I was more of a fan of like the Jeff Hardys, that kind of stuff. But as I've grown up, I've understood the awesomeness of Goldberg. And I will say that when he returned, he cut a great promo where he said, children have no more heroes. And I have taken this to be a life motto of mine as I criticize culture at every turn that I get in real life, cucks. All right? So that kind of stuff is what really pushed me over the edge to really appreciate Goldberg and people like Goldberg. Earlier today, I heard this interview. It was Goldberg at the Booker T, whatever, podcast, right? And Booker T was like, come on, let us know. People want to know about William Scott Goldberg. And Goldberg said, no, they don't, right? And then Booker T and the other guy laughed, right? And he's like, they just want to see me run through people. Finally, a guy who understands. I don't give a rat's ass about William Scott Goldberg. That sounds like an accountant. I care about Bill Goldberg, or preferably just Goldberg. You know what I mean? That's what I care about. So I really appreciate that he said that, because it kind of encapsulates the idea that he is very aware of what he is and what his draw is, right? It's a hard-hitting guy who just looks like $1 million and is just suplexing motherfuckers left and right, which I appreciate. So for that reason and others, of course, such as the fact that he was just very entertaining during all his stints, Goldberg gets an honorable mention. Next up, we have Y2J. Now, Y2J, I know, he's an AEW guy now, you know what I'm saying? But I can't pretend that Y2J wasn't great, right? Now, again, as a kid, I never really liked Y2J. I kind of he always felt like, why is this guy a big deal? I didn't particularly like his promos, considering that you had people like The Rock there who were cutting way better promos. But later on, I started to appreciate him. When he came back and he turned heel and he had the whole suit and tie gimmick, I thought that was great. We call people tapeworms and parasites. That was awesome. This is a guy that always made the most out of what he had, right? There was a match that he had with Shawn Michaels where he cracked his tooth, and then he knew he cracked his tooth and he smiled like in a devious way, right? With his cracked tooth, so it would show, right? Because it added some character to it. Y2J, I don't have to say much about him. I mean, everybody knows Jericho. I sometimes make fun of the fact that he keeps saying oh, I've reinvented myself. He has and he hasn't, right? A lot of that is just propaganda from AEW. But it can't be denied that he has, in fact, had moments where he has reinvented himself, right? So, for example, at his age of nearly 50, he now has a new finisher. You know what I mean? And it's not that he can't do his old finishers. He does that, so he has a new character. So Jericho, I look forward, motherfuckers, to the day that Jericho comes back to WWE. All right. Next up, honorable mention. I'm going to go through these a little bit fast because I put a few down. Randy Orton. Randy Orton, you can't really have a list of great wrestlers and not even give him an honorable mention. Randy Orton has been part of so many great moments. Even now with Edge, the feud with Triple H, I thought was great. When he was punting people, that was great. And even when he turned face after Evolution ousted him, that was pretty cool. I didn't appreciate it then because he was just a mid-carder, but he felt like a mid-carder. But yeah, he's still cool. Then we have Gregory Helms, motherfuckers. Gregory Helms. Now, a lot of people give credit where credit is not due. And don't give credit to people like Gregory Helms. Now, if Gregory Helms was in AEW right now, Gregory Helms would be better than basically everyone there, right? And here's why, motherfuckers. Because Gregory Helms could wrestle, right? He was a cruiserweight, but he wasn't a tiny cruiserweight, right? Especially when he beefed up. After he was the Hurricane, when he became Gregory Helms, he beefed up, right? He became serious. Shining Wizard was a very innovative finisher at the time. A lot of people didn't have those types of finishers, running strikes, but he did, and that was awesome. And also the fact that he was the Hurricane, which I didn't really I didn't love the Hurricane, but I understood why people liked it. And the fact that he transitioned from the Hurricane to Gregory Helms was amazing. I thought that was great because to me it was that's kind of the point of the Hurricane gimmick, right? That's kind of what I hope happens with Velveteen Dream. I've mentioned it before, where it's the point is to just elevate you so people like you, and then you just boom, turn heel, but he's still the same guy, right? And then when Gregory Helms got injured, that's when his career just went downhill because he came back a year later and he just wasn't the same. I mean, he was still a good wrestler, but it just wasn't entertaining anymore. It was now he became a comedy character again. He was a face. He was facing MVP and Shelton Benjamin. This guy, I think if he hadn't gotten injured, that one year would have been his year. He would have been a U.S. champ. And JBL would say, Gregory Helms is going to win the world title one time, Mago, right? I honestly thought that was going to happen. So Gregory Helms, one of the biggest missed opportunities in my opinion. Then we have Kane. Kane, enough said. Nothing nothing can be said about Kane that is bad, right? Kane is awesome. Kane has been part of some of the greatest angles ever. Him taking the mask off, a lot of people, including myself, didn't like it at the time, but it worked. It revitalized the Kane character, right? All his subsequent returns, I didn't particularly like because of the fact that, like nothing really came from it, right? It's like you were expecting Kane to come back and just destroy Cena, but that didn't really happen. But Kane was awesome. Like some of the best moments in the Attitude Era involved like DX or some other bad guys. What the fuck is this shit? Sorry about that. My TV just started talking all of a sudden, even though I had it on mute. It's weird. But anyways, so yeah, the Attitude Era was filled with scenarios where just bad guys beating good guys, and then just like the pyro goes off and Kane comes in and cleans house. And it was just great because it made Kane feel awesome. And Kane was a central focus of the invasion angle, which I really liked a lot. A lot of people hate it, but I'm going to talk about that in another video coming soon, motherfucks. Get ready for that one. Then the last two in the honorable mention are Big Show, because I think Big Show is one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time. Big Show, his charisma is so underrated that it's not even funny. And Big Show has done everything. He's been a comedy guy. He's been a serious heel when you need him to be. And he's been even a fun face sometimes. Then lastly, in the honorable mention, we got Mark Henry, motherfuckers. Mark Henry. I just saw a documentary on Mark Henry, and it made me like him even more. Mark Henry is, I've used him as an example before of the right kind of person to have in a company, especially a wrestling company, right? Mark Henry is someone that proved himself time and time again. They're like, do something stupid. He would do something stupid, right? Be a funny guy. He'd be a funny guy. He's so charming, right? And the fact that he legitimately is one of the strongest people in the history of the world pays dividends. In the documentary, which I saw on WWE Network, which I highly recommend, Mark Henry was saying how like basically they sent him to OVW, to the jobber leagues after Sexual Chocolate, right? And after that, he told Vince, he was like, I need to go compete in the World's Strongest Man, because basically these people were talking shit. They were saying how like Mark Henry shouldn't call himself the World's Strongest Man because he's not competing with them, right? So Vince was like, all right, you can go if you want, Mark, but let me just tell you this, motherfucker. He said there's no room for the second strongest man in the world in WWF, right? So Mark Henry went, and he had to win, otherwise he'd lose a job, or like, at least that's how the documentary presented it. He won, right? Came back, and then was a jobber once again, and then he became champion. Honestly, like one of the best, like aside from Benoit, who is not gonna make this list for obvious reasons, motherfuckers. I hate that son of a bitch for killing his family. But aside from Benoit and people that are later in this list, right? One of the greatest moments, in my opinion, was when Mark Henry won the World Heavyweight title. And that's because he really deserved it. Nowadays, these stupid ass fans, Sammy Guevara comes in there, they're like, you deserve it. Get the fuck out. What does he deserve? He's a jobber, right? Or even like Goldust, who's good. I like Goldust. He's not in this list. I like Goldust, but people are like, you deserve it. You still got it. I'm like, get over yourselves, right? Like Mark Henry's someone that actually deserved it. You know what I mean? When Mark Henry won the world title, he actually deserved it because he paid his dues, motherfuckers. Whatever happened to paying your dues, And he paid his dues. He did everything he was supposed to do, and he was rewarded for it, right? He didn't job like in some other company. Like this is why like people are like, oh, Matt Hardy should go to AEW. No, he should pay his dues. Now Matt Hardy's not going to be a world champion. But who knows? If he stays in WWE, he has a better shot than being WWE champion in AEW. Let me tell you that, motherfuckers. Now that we're done with honorable mentions, we're going to slow it down a bit, motherfuckers. And we're going to talk about the top 10. We're going to go in, ascending order. So we're going to start with number 10, and we're going to end with number 1. So without further ado, motherfuckers, all right, number 10. Coming in at number 10, we got a lot of people's favorite wrestler. Viva la raza, Eddie Guerrero, ese. Now, Eddie Guerrero has always been one of my favorites. I'm not one of those people that, like, when he died, he became my favorite. Eddie Guerrero, to me, is, like, one of the perfect entertainers, right? And in some scenarios, he might be higher than some of these people on the list. But today, I'm feeling like he's number 10. And I'll explain why. Eddie Guerrero is someone that always was entertaining. It didn't matter what he was doing. He could have been the most dastardly heel trying to steal Rey Mysterio's son away, and he was still the highlight of that feud. And he could have been the goofy, funny face and still be the highlight of that. He could also be the serious face feuding with JBL and still kind of be the highlight of that. You know what I mean? So with that being said, Eddie Guerrero will always have a spot in my heart as one of the most entertaining wrestlers of all time. I mean, just back in the day, when I was a kid in elementary school, a lot of my classmates, for some reason, it was really weird. A lot of my classmates were Mexican young men, right? Like young men. They were boys, right? Little kids. And there's a lot of my class, and a lot of them would talk like cholos, right? Because like, you know, I guess their dads and uncles or whatever were cholos. So they'd be like, hey, mamacita. This is like in third grade, motherfuckers, right? And I was like, oh, mamacita, that's kind of clever, right? And then Eddie Guerrero started doing it, and then all of them started doing it again, right? Because wrestling was big back then, motherfuckers. So, he was someone that wasn't afraid to play stereotypes and make them affable, right? So it's like, nowadays we're all about like, oh, stereotypes are bad. They're not bad if the person playing it is a likable person, right? So Eddie Guerrero played various Latino stereotypes, and he played them all very, very well. So for example, he played number one, the lecherous Latin lover stereotype, right? Both as a face and as a heel. First, he was this like madly in love, passionate Latino guy with China. Then he became the adulterer, another Hispanic stereotype, motherfucks. Then after that, with the whole lie, cheat, and steal, he became another version of the Mexican stereotype. He became a guy that cheats, steals because he doesn't want to work hard and is lazy, which is a stereotype. And then he also came riding lowriders, right? A lot of these are negative stereotypes, or like they're definitely not positive stereotypes, right? Some of them may be neutral, you know, like the Latin lover one, but they're not good in any way, shape, or form, right? But he was able to leverage that, and because he was so charismatic, one of the most charismatic people of all time, and so entertaining, motherfucks, so entertaining, it was possible for him to make it to make himself a fan favorite. Even if he was a heel, people liked him. He's perfect because people would pretend they hated him, but everybody loved Eddie Guerrero. So Eddie Guerrero, number 10, in my opinion, well deserved, motherfucks. Now number 9 is kind of a like a twofer, right? It's a twofer. I'm putting 2 wrestlers at number 9. Now the question is, why am I putting 2 wrestlers there, right? Because so technically this is more of like a best 11 wrestlers, because number 9 has 2 people, but number 9 is going to be the following 2 people, right? I consider them so equal, right, in how much I like them, that they have to occupy the same spot, right? But I'm not going to let them take away a spot from someone else. So the 2 people are, and you might be surprised because they're not very similar at all, but I just like them exactly the same. AJ Styles, motherfuckers. AJ Styles comes in at number 9. Now you might be wondering, why is AJ Styles coming in at number 9? Well, I'll tell you, motherfuckers. I'll tell you why. AJ Styles is someone that in TNA, he was obviously the guy that stood out. And the fact that AJ Styles was able to carry that company basically on his back for multiple years, right? It's something that is very, very admirable, right? And it goes to show how good he actually is, right? He had some classic matches in TNA. Forget about the WWE matches. Forget about that garbage in New Japan. In TNA, like check out AJ Styles versus Daniels versus Samoa Joe, Destination X, one of my favorite matches of all time. Check out the first ever X Division Championship match, right? Which was like a 4-way double elimination match. Fantastic match, right? The Ultimate X match with Petey Williams, Sabin, and AJ Styles. Another incredible match. Then in TNA, he had some incredible feuds. You know, first of all, he had his time as a Prince AJ, the Prince of Phenomenal, where he was like Kurt Angle's like whatever, like lackey or whatever. And then eventually there was a point where he threw away the crown and he was like, I'm back to being AJ. And it felt awesome. AJ Styles is great. A guy that's consistently been able to do new moves, hasn't lost a beat, and honestly, one of the most deserving people to ever make it to WWE from anywhere else. So AJ Styles gets that. The other number 9, right, is John Bradshaw Layfield, motherfuckers. JBL. JBL is everything you want in a human being in the context of being a professional wrestler, right? JBL is a big guy. He's strong. He's loud. He's abrasive. And he's tough, right? These are realities of the world. Oh, but Joey Styles knocked out JBL. Yeah, maybe after he had like 30 shots. You know, 30 shots of alcohol, that is. Then, of course, he was like wobbly. But obviously, no one here would suggest that JBL would get beat up by Joey Styles. That's ridiculous, right? That's crazy. It's just those people that are like, oh, Jericho choked out Goldberg. Yeah, he got like a lucky, whatever, headlock in. But no one would suggest that in a fight, Jericho would have a chance against Goldberg. I mean, I guess it's possible, but you know what I'm saying, right? So JBL, one of the greatest transformations of all time. So over. A lot of people don't know this because they only started watching like a bit later, but during the Attitude Era, Bradshaw was so over. He was one of the most over guys on the roster, right? The APA, but it was mostly Bradshaw. He was the one that carried that team. He was the one that would win like any kind of match that they had that had any significance. It'd be him winning with a clothesline from hell. He was like the A side, and Farouk was the B side. Now Farouk is awesome, doing it wrong, but JBL is amazing. JBL's title run with the WWE title is one of the best title runs ever, motherfuckers. Because this guy was such a fiendish heel, right? That you couldn't help but like appreciate the transformation that he had made, right? And honestly, Like a lot of people were like, oh, this guy was like a nothing and he became WWE champion. It didn't feel that way because the gimmick was so well done, right? They changed the gimmick so much that it was like, oh my God, this is like a whole new person. It's like a whole new character, right? Number one. Two, JBL is such a formidable opponent that it's believable that this guy can beat your ass, right? That he was held back and now he can beat your ass. Now he's a singles guy. He can whoop your ass. He's a big guy. You know, it's not unbelievable. It makes perfect sense. So that's number 9 for you motherfuckers. Now, number 8. Number 8, motherfuckers. Number 8. Rey Mysterio Jr. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, Rey Mysterio sucks. No, Rey Mysterio is one of the GOATs for sure, motherfuckers. And I'll explain to you why. There's one primary reason, right? Rey Mysterio has continued for decades to be relevant, to be entertaining, and to be a fan favorite by continuing to be a face and pretty much having the same gimmick as he's always had since his days in the Filthy Animals, right? Rey Mysterio doesn't need a gimmick. Rey Mysterio is a gimmick. Now, if we were looking back at wrestling 50 years from now, right, there would surely be some luchadors in WWE. And these luchadors would pretty much be Rey Mysterio copies, right? Kalisto, Sin Cara, all these guys, they're WWE's attempted answer to find a new Rey Mysterio. And the fact that they failed at finding a new Rey Mysterio speaks volumes as to how good Rey Mysterio is. Back in the day, this guy would very, very rarely botch, very rarely botch. He was doing things that no one else was doing back then. Now, a lot of people, oh, Ricochet could do it. Fuck Ricochet. How do you like them apples? But he was doing things that no one else was doing. And he, despite the fact that he's just a masked wrestler, right? He could cut a decent promo. And he has been involved in so many good angles. A lot of them involve things like Eddie Guerrero or CM Punk, where like the other guy is clearly like the person pushing the angle forward. But Rey Mysterio's Royal Rumble win and that whole story behind that was incredible. Another one of my favorite matches of all time, Rey Mysterio versus Shawn Michaels on Raw. Like the Raw that Eddie Guerrero died. That match was incredible for 2 reasons. One, it was just a very good match. And 2, Rey Mysterio defeated Shawn Michaels, which is unheard of. It's like Shawn Michaels is Shawn Michaels, you know? But Rey Mysterio defeated him, and that was at the moment when I was like, oh, Rey Mysterio's gonna win the Rumble, you know? He just beat Shawn Michaels. He just got like a huge rub here, you know? Like, and then Chavo Guerrero beat JBL, but JBL was on the downhill, and Shawn Michaels was never gonna go on the decline. So Rey Mysterio, one of the best ever. He's been able to elevate so many people with him. You know, like the matches he's had with Jericho, with Kane. Like, he can work anybody. He can work with anybody, man. He is one of the best of all time, like in the ring for sure. Now, number 7, The Rock, motherfuckers. The Rock. Now, when I was growing up, The Rock was my favorite wrestler of all time for reasons that I don't have to elaborate on because they're so glaringly obvious. The primary one being that The Rock is the coolest person maybe ever in WWE history. Now, The Rock in the ring, The Rock was not this like great athlete, but he didn't need to be. That's the beauty of wrestling, right? Wrestling, you don't need to be a great athlete. I mean, he is athletic, but you don't need to be a great athlete. You don't need to be like acrobatic. You just need to have the ability to sell a story, right? A lot of people use this example, right? They use the example of Rock versus Hogan as being a match that, like, if you watch it mute, the match is shit. But if you watch it with the crowd, like all the reaction, it's one of the best matches ever for that reason, right? It was able to rile people up. And I feel the same way about John Cena versus The Rock at WrestleMania, the one in New Jersey that I went to. I forget which one it is, like 28, I think, right? That one was great too because I was in the crowd and everyone was losing their minds. Apparently, this didn't really translate well on TV, but if you were there that night, everyone was losing their minds. I've never been part of anything greater than that in terms of wrestling. So The Rock, I mean, the only reason The Rock isn't higher up, The Rock could easily be number 1, but he's not for obvious reasons. And the obvious reasons are he left, motherfuckers. He left WWE to pursue Hollywood. Now, other people have done the same, right? Like John Cena has done the same. But John Cena paid his dues, motherfuckers. John Cena was around in wrestling for a long time. He carried the company on his back, something The Rock never really did. And he did it for a year here and there, right? But The Rock left them high and dry, and then Stone Cold left them high and dry. And that's why some people that didn't leave him high and dry are up in the rankings, motherfuckers, and some people are not. So, The Rock, number 7, I think that's a good spot for The Rock. Number 6, The Undertaker, motherfuckers. The Undertaker. Now, Undertaker to me, when I was a kid, I pretty much, like the only Undertaker that I knew when I was a kid was the American Badass because I kind of started watching at the tail end of Undertaker's, like, you know, evil guy gimmick, you know, the first time around. And then he got injured. So like for 6-7 months or whatever, Undertaker wasn't even there. And I was like, I'm like, oh, I forgot about him. And then, like, when he came back, I knew he was, but I'm like, oh, I didn't remember him being a biker. And now he's a biker, right? Now, I didn't really appreciate that because for some reason he just looked a little sloppy to me. Like, his face is a little weird, right? He was, I don't want to say fat, but he was a little chunky, right? And compared to people that he was being put against, right? Like Triple H, or even worse, compared to people that he was next to, like Kane, his tag team partner, he just looked inferior to Kane. Like, I'm just like, Kane is clearly the superior man here, right? But Undertaker's amazingness came from much later on. Undertaker has had a series of incredible matches with the likes of Batista, Edge, Cena to a lesser extent, Jericho, even Rey Mysterio. Undertaker is just great, man. Undertaker, he's had, obviously, Shawn Michaels. He's had so many good matches, right? So many good moments. And the fact is what it is. This guy is actually someone that reinvented himself. And you know what's better than that, motherfuckers? He didn't do it because he was becoming stale, because everybody loved The Undertaker. But he did it because he could. And because he really is, I don't want to say an artist because that sounds fucking weird, but because he really is a wrestler, he really understands wrestling. He was like, I'm going to do what these other motherfuckers like Stone Cold and The Rock are doing. I'm going to be myself because I think myself is pretty damn cool. And he was right. But had he been wrong, it would have failed completely. And I honestly do not think that he would have had the legacy that he has now if he had done that. But Undertaker continued, and to some extent continues, to be a very impressive wrestler. You know, Undertaker's tight. I love Undertaker, you know, for that reason and that reason only. Beyond that, I don't think too much of him. Number 5, John Cena, motherfuckers. John Cena. Now, a lot of people are gonna disagree with this, and I understand that, all right? And some people might be surprised that Cena is this low, because I always talk about how great John Cena is. Now, John Cena is one of the 3 wrestlers in my lifetime that I have predicted will be amazing, right? And 2 of them, it's happened. One of them was John Cena. The other one was AJ Styles. The third one was Adam Cole. Now, my mind has changed on Adam Cole, but that remains to be seen, right? He might still be a big star. Now, my mind has changed in the sense that he shouldn't be a big star, but I feel like he still will be. So there you go, motherfuckers. That's one reason why I like Cena. The other reason why I like Cena is because of his incredible work ethic. Now, that has nothing to do with being entertaining. I understand that. Or really being a wrestler in the conventional sense. But I appreciate the fact that his work ethic translated to him consistently wrestling on Monday Night Raw and sometimes on SmackDown, right? While pursuing several other projects, right? John Cena is someone that he works so hard that you don't forget who he is, right? Now, for a few years, his promos were the same exact thing. But that's only because that's just what was going on, right? Nothing was going on. People were just trying to take the belt off him. So he's like, you gotta take the belt from me, Jet? I'm not gonna let you, because hustle, loyalty, and respect. But if you look at John Cena as the rapper, that was fantastic, right? If you look at him, look, when he was feuding with The Rock, I thought that was insane. That was great, right? And the fact that John Cena has been able to be in such incredible shape and delivers such high, I don't know, Cena only has 5 moves. No, he doesn't, motherfuckers. He's got plenty of moves, right? And more importantly, he can take the moves of everyone else and never botches. Like, I don't think anyone, like, honestly, I think out of all wrestlers of all time, it's possible that the least botchy wrestler is John Cena. It might be like Randy Orton or something like that, but it's one of them, you know what I mean? Like, John Cena never botches a move, So when you show me, like, oh, Okada's better, and like, he just botches every dropkick he does, or Nakamura, where the Kinshasa looks different every time, which I consider a botch, by the way. If your move is not consistently the same way, like it doesn't look the same, it's a botch. Like another culprit of this is Bianca Belair. She does the KOD, and sometimes it looks good, and sometimes it doesn't, right? And I'm just like, no. You got to make it look good. The AA, it looked like it was supposed to look. Hate it or love it, it looked like it's supposed to look every time. John Cena never botches anything. And for that, he gets a lot of credit from me. You don't need to do like a Phoenix Splash to be entertaining. No, you don't. Look at Eddie Guerrero, right? The Frog Splash was not the most entertaining thing that he did, right? The Three Amigos probably got a bigger pop than the Frog Splash. Right? The Three Amigos, he could have even done one Amigo and it still would have gotten a pop, presented the right way, So John Cena, easily one of the best. The fact that he has been able to headline so many WrestleManias, right? And create such a positive impact for the WWE, right? Drawing millions and millions and millions of dollars for them is something that should not and will not on this channel be trivialized. John Cena is one of the GOATs, right? And he is someone that you all know it, motherfuckers. You all know it. What I'm going to say right now, you know it's true. I think all of us secretly hope that John Cena doesn't show up for 10, maybe 15 years. 15 is a long, but 10 years, right? So when he's like 52, right? He'll still be in great shape, right? And he comes back at 52 and he has a match with, let's say, Velveteen Dream, whoever the next Cena is, right? That is a moment that will rival Rock versus Hogan, right? It's a moment that will rival Rock versus Cena, right? And it's a moment that's definitely going to happen. So keep that in mind. Keep in mind how excited everyone's going to be when Cena comes back in that capacity. That's how you know he's good, motherfuckers. And now we're getting to the top 4, which are very, very important. And in my opinion, these are the 4 that I don't think I'll ever change my mind on, you know? Like, and the rest of them might move up here and there from honorable mention to number 10. Like, for example, JBL might move to number 7. I don't know, something like that, right? But the realities are what they are. The top 4 will likely never change unless something amazing happens, right? Like Velveteen Dream, he's someone that one day might be in the top 10. But coming in at number 4, motherfuckers, your Olympic hero, Kurt Angle. That's right, motherfuckers. Kurt Angle comes in at number 4. Kurt Angle is awesome, right? Kurt Angle, I mean, I don't think anybody can dispute the fact that Kurt Angle is someone that, like, just, he picked up pro wrestling so because he's like a real athlete, you know what I mean? He picked it up really quickly, right? And when I say a real athlete, I mean he's like a combat athlete. He's just like a gold medalist at the highest level you can be, right? In an individual sport. He picked it up so well. But forget about that. Forget about the fact that Kurt Angle probably is the number 1 in-ring guy of all time. You can even ignore that, and even then, he would be in the top 10. Because Kurt Angle's charisma is so amazing, and he's so underrated in his charisma, right? People always see him as this technical wrestler, but he's way more, compare him to Benoit, right? Kurt Angle's personality back in the day, right? Kurt Angle, like when he first came in, he had one of the best gimmicks ever, right? Where he was this American hero, but he was like so like blissfully unaware of how he came off, right? And he was the heel, but he was, like, if you think about it, he was saying good things. Like, he would tell people, like, don't have sex without condoms, right? But nobody wants to hear that when they're about to get it on, right? You know? But it's the right thing. But it was presented so well, and he played the character so well that it really made sense. Now, his match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25, which is, in my opinion, the best match of all time. Like, not even close. And nothing comes close to it. That's the best match ever, right? The fact that he was someone that was able to reinvent himself from goofy, like, unaware heel to wrestling machine, the wrestling machine, which just also fit him very well, right? With a mouthpiece and everything, you just look like a pit bull, like ready to take your head off, right? All that, all of his promos, right? The times that he was able to make fun of himself, the times that he was able to make fun of others, right? Like him rapping against John Cena and dancing like an idiot in the ring. That was amazing, right? Him wearing the little toupee when Edge shaved his head. That was tight. His match with Shane McMahon at King of the Ring. Another like top 10 matches of all time, easily, right? Kurt Angle is just, like, the fact that he went to TNA and it was such a huge deal. You know what I mean? Incredible. Kurt Angle is one of the GOATs, man. One of the GOATs, motherfuckers. No one comes close to Kurt Angle in terms of in-ring ability. But if there's anyone that does, it's number 3, motherfuckers. That's right. The sexy boy, Shawn Michaels, HBK, motherfuckers. Shawn Michaels gets this spot, the coveted number 3 spot, for basically one reason, right? His demeanor, his character, right? Just looking back before he became a born-again Christian, right? Shawn Michaels was someone that was so believable in the way that he was, right? So believable that you're like, this guy is not even playing a character. This guy is like this, right? Like self-absorbed, weirdly flamboyant. Like even Velveteen Dream, who has like not a similar gimmick, but has like a similar, portrayal where he's like this guy who wears like, cut off tops and has like a belly button ring, or like, or he would have a belly button ring, that kind of character, right? With Shawn Michaels, it's like, dude, this guy like fits perfectly. And the fact that this was in the 90s makes it even better, because now that's like the norm. There's nothing like, I was in LA with my friends a few years ago and we saw this guy. He was a Sikh Indian, so he had the Sikh Indian turban, long beard. He was wearing a dress, right? Like a cut-off dress, like a mini dress type of thing, right? Like high-heeled boots, and he started dancing randomly at Jack in the Box. I mean, like, these kind of things are now all over the place, motherfuckers. But back in the 90s, Shawn Michaels had this idea, like this dual identity of like, there is something effeminate about this guy, but there's also something very masculine about him, right? His raspy voice, the fact that in real life he's like a hunter and like a southern boy, like that. Shawn Michaels really fits the bill. Now, just like I said about Kurt Angle, the fact that Shawn Michaels has been able to produce such instant classics like the match that he had with Kurt Angle, the Taker matches in his advanced age, not advanced age, but, you know, not in his prime, we'll just say that, right? His match with Ric Flair, another classic WrestleMania match, right? And one of my favorite Shawn Michaels matches, his return match against Triple H, which was a street fight, where he came out in jeans, and he was jumping off ladders. People were like, oh, this guy gonna wrestle? Jumping off ladders, incredible shit. Shawn Michaels, or his match with John Cena, which was like an hour long on Raw. Shawn Michaels really is a once-in-a-lifetime wrestler, and he ekes Kurt Angle out and gets number 3 instead of number 4, just because of the fact that Shawn Michaels continued to be a company man, and he stayed with WWE forever, even though he could have left and probably taken a lot more money in WCW. He stayed, and he basically, like, continued to improve, which is something that is very, very rare. Like Kurt Angle, you know, eventually he fell off. He started doing similar things. Shawn Michaels, this guy is just like, you know, incredible in the ring. Now, another thing that he gets bonus points for that helps him eke out Kurt Angle is the sheer fact of Shawn Michaels' what I'm going to call comeback moment, right? Where he hits like a random ass forearm, then he does the kip up, then he does his little sequence, right? And then he winds up the band, motherfuckers, he tunes up the band, he tunes up the band. That is also incredible. You know what I mean? That's something that, like, the amount of pop that gets is well deserved. And now, for the last 2 spots. Number 2 is going to be controversial because, once again, it's not one wrestler, it's 2 wrestlers. But unlike the AJ Styles JBL at number 9, this 2 wrestler spot is actually a tag team, motherfuckers. It's a tag team. And I could not put an individual member because, in this case, it's the greatest example of the sum is greater than the parts, right? This is the absolute favorite tag team of the hater and the best tag team of all time, motherfuckers. That's right, you guessed it. Coming in at number 2, we've got the Dudley Boys, motherfuckers. The Dudley Boys. Now, when I was a kid, I was more of a Hardy Boys fan. But as I grew up, I started to realize how amazing the Dudleys are. The Dudleys are, I mean, I don't even think it's close. Like, who is the next best tag team? Like, the Dudleys are so much better than every other tag team that it's not even funny at this point, right? The Dudley Boys, first of all, have the greatest tag finisher of all time, the 3D. They're right, number 1. 2, they have other iconic spots and moves, right? So they have the Dudley device, which was like a doomsday device. And more importantly, motherfuckers, they have the what's up? Now, for those of you that were not around in the 90s, right, or were not aware of the movie Scary Movie 1, even if you've seen the movie, you wouldn't be aware of this, but in the 90s, like in the late 90s, saying, what's up, was like a meme, right? It was like a meme. Everyone did it, right? Like, think of it as the dab. You know, people were doing the dab a few years ago, but like everyone was doing it. You know what I mean? Not like just a bunch of nerds. Everyone was doing it. So just that alone, I think that alone lays the case for best tag team of all time. Another thing that lays the case, they never botch anything. Once again, the Dudley Boys never botch anything. They never botch the 3D, which requires significant timing and coordination. As far as I know, Bubba Ray never hurt anybody with the super bomb that they did on tables. You know, it's just incredible. The whole shtick, the whole Devon get the tables, awesome, right? Putting women through tables in the 90s, awesome. Everyone was waiting for that moment every week. Who are the Dudley Boys going to victimize now? Their interactions with people like JR, when JR was like, those damn Dudleys, and the Dudleys the next week are like, what'd you say about us, JR, right? All that. Their incredible presence, right? One of the things that the invasion angle gets a lot of heat for is that, like a lot of people weren't portrayed as they should have been. The Dudleys were, right? They were a centerpiece of the invasion angle that often gets left out, but they were very important, right? The fact that the Dudleys have every tag team title ever, even the New Japan ones, motherfuckers, right? They have everything that one can have, right? In terms of tag teams. And let's not forget, Aces and Eights, right? Where the 2 of them were behind, in my opinion, one of the best factions, honestly, ever. I love Aces and Eights, right? But more importantly, the ability of Bubba Ray Dudley to cut a promo, right? And I will say, Devon Dudley, if he were paired with anyone but Bubba Ray, he would be the Bubba Ray of that tag team. Devon Dudley is one of the most underrated wrestlers in the history of wrestling. Devon Dudley is an incredible wrestler, and Bubba Ray is just a little bit better than him, and Bubba Ray is awesome, right? Bubba Ray, go on YouTube and watch Heatwave. Just type it on YouTube, Heatwave Dudley Boys, and click the first one, and just see the kind of promos they were cutting in ECW. The Dudley Boys, they're believable tough guys, right? They're not these two guys that look like models, right? They just look like two guys that would beat your ass. And they are two guys that would beat your ass. And now, without further ado, motherfucks, some of you probably figured this out because I talk about this quite a while, but the number one wrestler, in my opinion, of all the times, motherfucks, here it is. Christian. That's right, motherfucks. Christian! At last, you're on your own. That's right. Now, a couple of things about Christian. The first, this is something that I had forgotten about until very recently. So this has not influenced my opinion whatsoever. But the first wrestling personality I ever seen come out was Christian. I was at my friend's house and he was a big fan. I didn't like wrestling. It was 97. Christian came out and he thought it was Test. He's like, Test? And then they're like, Christian. He's like, oh, it's Christian. Right? Oh, it's Christian, right? And I was like, who the fuck is this dweeb? He looks like a loser. He's not that big. He's not built or anything like that. And of course, back then, Christian was not an important guy, right? During his run with the Brood, he was the guy that, that The Undertaker deemed too weak. And he was going to expel him from the Dark Ministry, right? And then Edge and Gangrel stood up for him. And Christian and Gangrel and Edge separated from the Dark Ministry, right? But Christian was seen as the weak link. Now, this led to Edge and Christian being obviously the great tag team that they were. But it was evident from the beginning. There was this woman called Barbara Bush. She was like a diva for a while, right? And she came out, she was like an EMT, and she really, in the beginning when she was introduced, she really had a crush on Edge. That's how it was presented, right? And I'm like, and I remember when as a kid, I'm like, but why isn't Christian getting any attention, right? I'm just like, I like Christian more, I don't know. I couldn't explain why at the time. I'm like, I like Christian more, right? And Edge was clearly going to be the one that was destined to be the star of that tag team. Like, they had already decided that it was going to be Edge, right? Now, here's the problem with that, right? In my opinion, they decided wrong. No one will ever change my mind. Christian is the star of that. And when I go back, sometimes when I have a lot of work to do, I'll watch old Raw, right? And I'll always pause my work, turn the volume up, when it's time for an Edge and Christian promo. And every time, right, the promo is cut 95% by Christian, and Edge says, and that now, for those with the benefit of flash photography, or he does a little rhyme in the end or something like that. Christian was the guy that carried that team, right? Edge was the guy that was given the opportunities, and don't get me wrong, Edge is great. He should be an honorable mention probably, but I never really liked him, probably because I like Christian so much. Now, fast forward to the Invasion angle. Now, during the Invasion, I'm not going to talk about this much because I'm going to address this in the Invasion video that I'm going to make. But in that angle, right, a lot of people were kind of lost in the shuffle, right? One person that wasn't was Edge, right? And by extension, neither was Christian. Christian shined during the Invasion angle more than he should have, considering just the volume of people that were there. Eventually, right, Christian became European champ, IC champ, etc., who cares, right? Then, after the brand split, Ruthless Aggression era, motherfuckers, after that is when Christian started becoming, in my opinion, the best wrestler in the world, right? Here's why. First of all, they put him in a tag team with Jericho. Before that, they had the Un-Americans, which was great, right? Then they put him in a tag team with Jericho. Jericho and Christian are one of my favorite tag teams of all time, right? Ironically, they feuded with the Dudley Boys, who were better, but back then I liked Edge and Chris Jericho more, right? Sorry, Christian and Chris Jericho more. Now, this led to one of the greatest WrestleMania angles of all time. Christian versus Jericho with Trish in the middle of it, right? Now, this was weird because Christian was always presented as an undercard guy who would sometimes become a mid-carder, right? Kind of like how Seth Rollins is a mid-card guy who sometimes becomes a main eventer, right? Christian was presented like that, except one level below. So I'm like, all right, Jericho, I think last year or the year before that, Jericho was in the main event. So I'm like, what the fuck, you know what I mean? This is weird. He's in the opening match against Christian, but I didn't realize, I was like, no way, Christian wins, right? And I was cheering for Christian just because the storyline was just so great and Christian was so hilarious. There was a part where Christian had like he was telling Jericho like Trish is using you. Trish is using you, and Jericho was like, look, Christian, like I really like her. And then Christian goes to Trish and he's like, let me tell you a story, Trish, about two best friends named John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Right? She's like, what? He's like, well, there was some girl named Yoko Ono that like drove a wedge between them. And he's like, and if I were Paul, he's like, I would have hit that broad with a one-man concerto and taken her out of the equation, right? Which was hilarious. Then there was a match that it was Christian versus Trish. And Christian was like, yo, I'll lay on my back if you lay on yours. She's like, what? He's like, no, I didn't say anything. Then he beats her with the walls of Jericho, which sets up the feud. In the end, Trish betrays Jericho, goes with Christian, right? And I'm like, there it is. There it is. They actually have plans for Christian. Christian is awesome, right? That led to nothing because Christian, unfortunately, again, injuries just ruined careers, man. He got injured like I think the first time in his career ever that he missed time from injury. He got injured, and Trish was paired up with Tomko, who was Christian's bodyguard, right? Then when Christian came back, at that point, Trish has turned face, right? So that the boost that Christian would have gotten by being associated with Trish was gone because he would have won a lot of matches with Trish by his side, right? But what happened was he came back with Tomko, and he picked up right where he left off, motherfucks. He grabbed the ball and he ran with it. The highlights were this. Vince McMahon comes in and announces a new draft lottery, right? And Christian says, whoa, before Vince can announce it, he's like, whoa. He said, we already know about like the diva search, right? With incredible confidence, right? And Vince was like, if you interrupt me again, you're going to be Captain Unemployed, not Captain Charisma. But that's how high they were on Christian. He was someone that was there to share the stage with Vince to put over the idea of the draft, right? And during this time, he started a inter-brand feud between him on Raw and Cena on SmackDown, where he would just make fun of Cena, right? Cena comes to Raw, the match becomes Cena versus Christian, and I'm like, great. I knew Christian wasn't going to win, obviously, but I'm like, great. He can have a competitive match. I didn't think it was going to be in the main event, right? And I'm like, he's going to have a competitive match. It's going to be great. Cena's going to beat him, but it's going to set Christian up as like another Randy Orton. That's what I thought was going to happen, right? No, they added Jericho in the mix because I guess they didn't have enough faith in Christian. And right now, that's when I was like, these people can go fuck themselves, right? There was one game, it was like WWE 2018 or like SmackDown versus Raw 2018, whatever the fuck it was, right? And in that game, Edge was rated like an 82 and Christian was rated an 86. And I was like, a lot of people online were like, oh, I can't believe Christian's rated higher than Edge. And I'm like, no. Christian has had one of the best years in wrestling, period, right? He was so over, man. He was so over as a heel. And he was so over, like in Canada, when they'd go to Canada, and he'd cut a promo, people would lose their minds, man. Captain Charisma, read him and weeps. I'm going to throw you over, Cena, for all of my peeps. And just like Dracula comes from Transylvania, I'm winning the Rumble and going on to WrestleMania, motherfucks. I still remember that because it was so great. Right, yeah, I'll go wrap off with Cena. Christian is the best. And then he went to TNA where he had a series of classic matches that one of my ex-girlfriends got from me after I had a thyroid surgery so I could feel better. She got me like the best of Christian or whatever, right? One of the best DVDs ever. These are just these TNA matches. Christian is undisputably going into the Hall of Fame where he will be recognized as one of the GOATs of all time, motherfucks. So, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe now. I know this video is a little long, but it is what it is, motherfucks. And look forward to two more things. One, my video on the invasion angle, which I think I'm going to release maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. I'll probably do it now, but I don't want to overwhelm the viewers with too many videos, right? So I might release it Wednesday or something. I don't know. We'll see, right? And my review of NXT, whatever the fuck is happening tonight. So with that, motherfuckers, subscribe, like, comment, share, hit the bell, hit your balls, do whatever you gotta do, motherfuckers.